SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Man, we're running out of Fridays this year, aren't we? We're just plowing right along into the next year. And
if you're playing along at home, it's the 5th. Rent's due.
That's right. So I'm optimistic, as I always am, about the coming year. You know, you feel like when I was in business, Rhino, every time we'd wind down the year and flip the calendar into the next one, I think, oh, boy, I hope I don't screw up as bad this year as I did last year. And if I do, God help me survive it. You have to acknowledge you just make mistakes. That's the way it works. But that's business. That's business. And you make mistakes and you learn from those. You hope you do. I used to tell the kids coaching baseball, you know, to err is human, but to make the same mistake twice is stupid. And it's so true. We got some good news for the midterm elections, as the United States Supreme Court cleared the way yesterday for Texas to use its newly drawn congressional map in 2026. So it's all fresh and ready to go, kind of a counter to what they're doing out there in California. It feels like it's just kind of a swap at the end of the day. May have a slight advantage in favor of the Republicans, but they got other issues they need to be concerned with, of course, as we head into the midterms. And let's be honest, it's always hard for the party who is in the White House, the party affiliation of the president. Typically in the midterms, what we see is a move towards the other party in the House, every House seat being contested, all 435, running for office every 2 years if you stay in for a while. And that's coming up right around the corner. Of course, here in Mississippi, we will also be electing a United States Senator, as Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith's term in office expires. She running for re-election, of course, being challenged by a couple of Republicans in the primary that I've seen. There may be more. I've seen a couple. And then I guess on the Democrat side, it's Scott Cologne.
I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah.
It's still 2025. I've spent maybe a grand total of 15 minutes looking at 2026 midterms in like a serious manner of looking at candidates and platforms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just too far ahead. And I feel like I speak for the everyday average Joe when I say that, because nobody outside of the realm of politicos and political talking heads gives a rat's rear end about the midterms until probably May or June at the earliest.
I actually agree with you. So I'm just pointing this out because of the Supreme Court decision, which was big. You have to admit.
I just feel like there's a lot of spinning wheels right now, especially up around D.C. about the midterms.
No, we have people running for governor here and other offices, and that's 2 years away. Right. That's 2 years away. We have members of our legislature holding fundraisers all over the place. It's never ending. The only way that makes
sense is if you are literally a nobody trying to get your name recognition out there.
I guess.
If people already know you, you're just kind of wasting money at this point.
Well, you certainly could argue that.
But then again, I think they're wasting money when they send out the mailers.
That mailers are actually proven to be very effective, the most effective.
I think they're effective if you're older than 50.
Well, that's
I don't think
anybody
votes. Under 50 is looking at that going, ooh, I'm going to vote for them. Look how witty they are on this piece of cardboard that they wasted my time having to throw away.
I'm aligned with you on that. However, you also know that we have a problem getting people under 50 to vote. That's the bigger problem.
Quit wasting money on the mailers when you know the 50-year-olds and over are already going to vote.
Well, you just need to mail them to everybody over 50. Because it's TikTok and Instagram, right? That's how you get. But they still don't go out and vote. That's a fundamental problem. You see that when you go to the polls, do you not? You look around like, man, everybody's old. Now for me, it's everybody's old like me. Oh, my gosh. Unbelievable. I'm with you, though. I'm too. And now, we're political talking heads, so you said everybody but the political. So we have to acknowledge that. That's what we do. But I'm with you that this year-round continuous campaigning is getting long in the tooth. I'm absolutely with you on that. And to a great extent, that's because, as we've talked about many times, we have a gazillion ways of connecting with people. It used to be that as I was a youngster growing up, it's campaign season because all of a sudden you'd see ads on TV, on the radio, like a few months before the election because nobody had enough money to run them for 2 years. And you didn't have all this social media stuff and all the other text messaging. My gosh, for this one Senate seat that was just contested in the district in which I live, just as an example, I got tons of texts from both candidates. I'm not faulting them. Don't get me wrong. I'm just pointing out that that's kind of the new approach to campaigning for one state Senate seat. And as we had Henry Barber on the other day, he was very articulate and analytical about that. A lot of money spent on a state Senate seat. That's not a lot of money for a statewide seat. What do you say, Rhino? Like $600,000 between the two, or something like that?
Yeah, I think you said it was $500,000 between the two.
Okay.
So yeah, just a little less than $600,000.
You know as well as I do. There's some state House seats. $10,000 will get you the House seat, right? It's serious. A couple of lobbyists will get you a House seat. I may be exaggerating a little bit, but I'm not sure in some of those seats. I think I'm probably pretty close to right and accurate there. But $600,000, $500,000,
it's less than 20.
Yeah, $500,000 for a state Senate seat, in a situation where you represent a party that's in the minority. In other words, you can't do anything. I'm going to get in there and fight for you. I love it when the politicians say that. What does that mean exactly?
It's almost like being in office isn't the purpose of running for office.
What is it?
It's the attention,
no doubt,
and all the money that gets shared around during the campaign.
And the state dinners, right? Don't forget that. Look, and I don't want to throw all of them under the bus. You and I both know there are a lot of great men and women that serve in our legislature that do it for the right reasons and truly are focused and committed to doing the right thing and moving Mississippi forward in a positive way. No doubt about that. But it's also, you can't, and it's not necessarily a fault or a flaw. It's just human nature reality. There's a lot of attention that you get. I've said many times, it ain't the money. You're not getting rich serving in the state legislature.
You got to go to Congress for that.
That's right. But not in the state legislature. It's just not happening. You shouldn't. But the bigger thing is it's the trappings, as I like to call it. And way more so at the federal level. The trappings.
What's the budget to renovate their office every stinking time somebody new gets elected?
It is true. And you've got this...
Like 2 or 3 times the median income for the average American is spent each and every time somebody new gets elected to renovate their office.
It is good. Measuring for the curtains, as they say, right? Yeah, and they all get big budgets to pay staffs, and that's understandable because... Even a House member, you're representing 735,000 people, and you got your team that's out and about in the district. I get it, I understand. But
it would be different if the staff was actually assigned to discussing things with the constituents instead of coming up with what sounds the cutest that can get me on TikTok.
No, it's attending the groundbreakings and the ribbon cuttings. And look, I got lots of friends that work on these staffs that truly are great people and very responsive, very good. I think it's also safe to say, like all other disciplines in life, some are better than others, right? We're coming back after the break. We got Paul Perez, president of the National Border Patrol Council, at 10:35.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Well, it's 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoe. Well, you can do anything but take me over my blue suede shoe. Well, you can knock me down, step in my face, slander my name all over the place. We'll do anything that you want to do. But honey, lay off them shoes and don't you step on my blue suede shoes.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. Don't you think, Rhino, that all that stuff we were talking about is one of the things that attracted people to President Trump? That self-made man, never been in politics, comes without all the baggage and the not beholden to anyone, doesn't have to return any favors, and just all the above. And so you see it in his governing.
More than that, it was the fact that he was willing to speak off the cuff. He wasn't filtering every single word that came out of his mouth through a study group and a consulting firm and a campaign manager. No, it was just, I'm saying what comes off my head.
Because he didn't try to pretend he was somebody he wasn't, right? Look, like it or lump it, take it or leave it, that's who he is. But don't you appreciate the authenticity of that? I do. Absolutely do. Do I wish he'd be a little more polished?
70-plus million people in the U.S. appreciate that.
Yeah. And look, he's the only thing that I would advise him on is to right now, and not that he listens to me, of course, and I certainly understand that, is maybe to be a little more realistic about things. Look, he's a winner, and he likes winning, and I like that. You know, I've told you many times that how he got my respect is the very first time he went to the G7 summit, and I don't mind bringing this up again because I think it's important, and I think it shows who he is. And when he went to that G7 summit and you know, they were walking between meetings, one building to another, the leaders of the EU and the G7 nations. And he looked up as he was talking to one of the leaders, I don't remember who it was, and realized, man, I'm in the back of the pack here, as they were walking. And this was on video, captured on video. Of course, the media all over the place. And, man, he realized where he was, and immediately he cocked his head back, stood tall, sort of buttoned and shuffled his jacket, and he elbowed his way through that group up to the front of the line. That's what got my attention, because all I could think about was the prior guy, Obama, running around for a month after he got elected, apologizing to all these nations, which are good people and good allies, but they are not the top of the pack. This country is. And there's a reason it is. It's because of our systems, the very ones the Democrats want to tear down. But he earned my respect greatly right there.
I think the main reason you see so many people on the sidelines when it comes to politics is because you can boil it down pretty simply with our two-party system. Democrats win and do actually crazy, insane things with their political power and get voted out.
That's
and
true.
Republicans win and do absolutely nothing and get voted out. And it's the same cycle over and over and over and over and over again. So why would you even take part in the cycle if you know, well, it's going to be the Democrats this time around. They're going to do a whole bunch of crazy crap. And people are finally going to wake up and realize Democrats are crazy. And they're going to get voted out and the Republicans get into power. And the Republicans are going to sit there and go, yeah, I did this. And they don't do jack diddly squat.
I got a great example for you that's currently happening. Yesterday, the Democrats, led by their august, let's say that with tongue-in-cheek, leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, isn't he something? I don't know what else to say without saying some of those words that you'd have to dump, as you had to do the other day on me. But Schumer's up there. He's got his health care plan, and so now they're looking to extend the Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies for 3 years. 3 years in a vote next week. That's what he announced yesterday. So the Majority Leader, John Thune, last month, of course, promised. Now, keep in mind, promise is not law. That's just an individual serving in the Senate, in this case, the highest-ranking Republican in the Senate, shaking hands and saying, yeah, we're going to take a look at that. That's about it. So he actually did commit to a vote on their health care proposal in exchange for ending the shutdown. And they maintained, the Democrats that joined in with Republicans to end the shutdown. Okay, if you're going to vote on it, Mr. Leader, then we'll go ahead and vote with the Republicans and get the government back open. So here comes Schumer. He says, give me 3 years. All right, to your point, where's the Republican plan? Where is it? They've been telling us about it.
Where's the Republican response to point out that, 3 years? You mean so you can make it a talking point in the next election cycle?
Right. That's a good point.
You just magically pick 3 for some reason? You don't even get that response from them.
My fear is you're going to see Republicans support something that gets these subsidies extended at least through the midterms, take it out of the quiver, if you will, of arrows for the Democrats in the midterms. I really do think that's what we're facing. I think it's a long shot that you're going to see any Republicans jump on a 3-year. But let's be honest. This is negotiating 101. I don't know that Schumer's this smart, but he's probably got some people around him that are advising him, hey, why don't we go for 3 and settle on 2, maybe 1. That's my concern. Is that's what's about to happen. And why I'm especially concerned, we talked about it, touched on it a little bit yesterday, that the GAO went out and sort of tested the healthcare.gov, which is the marketplace, the ACA, Obamacare marketplaces. That's where people go in all 50 states to purchase insurance in the individual market. Now, keep in mind, the individual market, meaning you don't get your insurance from your employer. You're on your own. You're self-employed. You work for a small employer that doesn't offer group coverage. You go to the marketplaces and you shop for plans there. And there are 5 to choose from, 5 carriers, multiple plans, but 5 carriers in Mississippi as an example. And you may or may not qualify for subsidies, premium tax credits, taxpayer funded. But we've seen now, I can't remember the figure, but like the GAO goes out and just runs some tests using fictitious Social Security numbers and getting premium tax credits being paid to insurance companies. I think in one case, they used one number to sign up 23 times. And I'm going to say once again, this is 100% bad information technology. 100%. Because this is all automated. This is all electronic. This doesn't even have, it's not my problem people on the other side. This is just go online and put your in. And sometimes you don't even have to supply your info. They'll still sign you up. And the one that gets caught the most, that gets scammed the most, are those that qualify for the zero premiums. Because like I've said, you don't even know you're signed up. And the government's paying the carrier for coverage you don't even know you have. What do you want to bet some of those people, Rhino, have insurance and go to the doctor and pay out of pocket not knowing they have insurance? That's even worse.
And what's sad is in that process, you go to the doctor goes, oh, yeah, it's a $30,000 bill. I don't have insurance. It's a $4,000 bill.
That's right. It's
but we wonder why insurance is so high. People love to blame the insurance companies. Blame the doctors too.
It's the I'm telling you, the reason health insurance is expensive is because health care is expensive. And there's a million factors that contribute to that. And one of those is we're just not healthy. And I know I've dwelled on this before, but right here in the state of Mississippi, where we have the highest infant mortality rate, that's expensive, as you know, right? That's extremely expensive when you're trying to stabilize a tiny infant that's had a problematic delivery. Am I right about this?
Oh, yeah.
Brutally expensive. And what's worse is all avoidable. All avoidable.
For the most part.
For the most part. Not 100%. There's some situations where you just have a problematic pregnancy. Heck, my wife had, what's it called, eclampsia, pre-eclampsia or something like that. And like for 2 months, she had to stay in bed before my son was born. And as soon as he was delivered, and they weren't sure, if this was going to be something we'd have to treat afterwards. You know how that is. Or said, but more than likely, once you deliver that baby, all the pressure's gone, clears up. And it did. It went away immediately. But it's a pain when you got a 20-something-year-old that's got to stay in bed for 2 months, as my poor wife had. And I was working, running a new business, had to go home a couple of times a day, and take care of her. Fortunately, I live close, but that's an example of nothing she did wrong there. It's the way I think the baby was lying, right? And nothing you can do about that. Now, I don't know. That's a long time ago. Maybe we've got some treatment for that to correct that problem during the gestation period. But that's just one tiny example.
All is just rest.
No doubt about it. And that's exactly what they ordered, and she did that. So, but nonetheless, we could save ourselves a lot of money in health care if we would just not use so much of it, which means get healthier. Coming right back.
From the Seabrook. Listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We welcome now Paul Perez, president of the National Border Patrol Council. Hey, Paul, thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we've seen a lot in the news about this Operation Swamp Sweep, which was to be, I guess, set in motion earlier this month, a few days ago, right? December 1st in Mississippi, where we are, and in Louisiana. Tell us about that and how that's been going so far.
So, yeah, it's been going good, just as expected. They've been apprehending criminal aliens. They've been apprehending anybody that's illegal in this country. Look, there's nothing discriminatory about enforcing immigration law. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, brown, if you're from Mexico, if you're from Chile, if you're from Europe, or, Africa. If you're illegally in this country, we're coming after you. We're going to get you and we're going to remove you from this country. So, they've been doing a great job, just like they have in other cities across the country. We're going to continue doing these sweeps. We're going to continue doing this targeted enforcement until we get all of these illegal aliens out of our country. We've got 4 years to do it. We've been doing it for a while, and it's been very, very successful for us.
What's the process? Walk us through that, Paul. Once you identify someone or a group of people who are illegal, do you just kind of investigate that and observe and do some research to make sure you got the right people, and then you move in and act? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. When I talk about targeted enforcement, we know that there's people in these communities that have criminal records, especially because of the fact that there's a lot of sanctuary jurisdictions that refuse to cooperate with ICE and Border Patrol. So we know a lot of these people are released back into the community, whether it's after they serve a prison stint or they get arrested for anything. They're released back, and so we know exactly who we're going after. We know exactly where they will be. And if we can't find them, but we find other people in the process, hey, they're getting swept up in that as well. So we're not going to turn a blind eye to anybody that's illegally in this country. If they happen to get swept up, so be it. We're going to remove them as much as we can.
What's then the legal process, Paul, to actually physically remove someone? Do you have to go before a judge in a court to get them to order that? Or does the Border Patrol, ICE, do they have the authority just literally to remove them from the country?
So we can remove them from the country. Everybody has due process, but most of these people have already had their due process and have warrants for removal. Okay. And a lot of these people skipped out on their hearings. They've got deportation orders. They've been removed in absentia. And many of these people have previously been deported. So as soon as we apprehend them, we can do a number of things, whether it's lock them up for reentry after deportation or remove them to their home country. So there are a lot of options there for us, and it's all going to depend on the severity of their criminal record. A lot of these people, are going to be put in prison because of the crimes that they've committed and gotten away with. So, yeah, we're going to do everything we can to make this country safe.
We've seen a lot of reports about self-deportation. Paul, tell us about that and the extent to which you're seeing that.
Yeah, there were a lot of critics that didn't believe that self-deportation would work. And what it is the U.S. government offers them a free trip home and gives them the opportunity to at least sometime come back in the near future. What the draw to that is, they know that we're very effective at doing exactly what we've been doing since this administration took over. And if we apprehend them without them self-deporting, there's absolutely no chance they're going to be able to come back into this country. And the fact that we've been successful is what's leading them to do the self-deportations, because they know we're very good at what we do, and they're more than likely going to get apprehended and removed. So that they're doing it themselves. It's very, very successful operation.
So then if they self-deport, I know I've seen Homeland Security Secretary Noam talk about that. You self-deport, you got a chance to come back, right, the legal way. But here's the question, Paul. If we remove these people who are in here illegally, and they haven't obviously self-deported, is there a way from us to ban them from trying to come back even legally in the future? Is that something that we should do?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, a lot of these people aren't going to come back anyway because they've got prior orders of removal. Okay. They've got criminal histories. They know they're not coming back. And so, yeah, it's a good chance that if we remove them, they're not coming back at all.
So, Paul, a concern that I and many Americans have is during the Biden administration, the borders were wide open. I've talked about it on this show, how with the television tuned into the news here, virtually every day there would be images of our border with just these caravans of people freely crossing into this country and then dispersing out, sometimes getting transportation supplied by the Biden administration. I don't feel like we've seen the worst of what possibly could happen, I dare say. Just looking back at the Afghan that just killed a National Guard member and shot two of them.
Yeah, what Biden and his administration did to this country was despicable. Like President Trump says, it should never be allowed to happen again. No president, no administration should ever be allowed to do what he did. He completely opened our borders to anyone wanting to come over here. And we've got a lot of people, to the tune of millions of people that were let in, thousands upon thousands of criminals. When President Trump talks about, prisons being empty and insane asylums, that's true. That's not rhetoric. That is truth. And you can see by the type of people that we've arrested, these criminals that came in under Biden that were paroled, these are bad people. And the vetting is very difficult to do if you've got a country like Venezuela or like Afghanistan that doesn't have good record keeping, that doesn't cooperate with us in the way that we would want somebody to cooperate when we're vetting. So, yeah, there are too many of those people out there. It's very, very scary to think of not only the people that were released by the Biden administration, but the people that came in when they pulled all of the ICE and Border Patrol agents off the line to process and transport these people out. So that's another aspect to it that a lot of people don't talk about, is those people that came in undetected because they weren't allowing the Border Patrol and ICE to do its job. So very scary. There's a lot of people in this country, and that's why it's very important for us to be in these cities and states going after as many people as we can.
And, Paul, a lot of folks aren't aware that we actually have legal immigration statuses that can be granted to people as well. And the more they come over illegally, is it true then the more likely they are to attain some sort of legal immigration status, which means then they can participate in many federal benefit programs? We have asylees, parolees, refugees, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Not under this administration.
Right.
That's not going to happen. There's not going to be any grant of mass amnesty, but a lot of the Democrats, I personally believe that what they were doing was allowing everybody to come in to reward them with some type of amnesty and then give them a path to citizenship, which of course you and I know would change the electorate.
Right.
They would be beholden to the Democrats and they would want to vote Democrats, and the Democrats were trying to be slick and smart about it. But it's exactly what everybody was talking about. They were trying to change the electorate. I believe that 100%, because the amount of people that came in unvetted, unfettered through this country was insane. It was some of the darkest times for this country because they completely opened the border to anyone wanting to come in.
Paul, you're on the ground there in this line of work. No way all these people were seeking legitimate asylum and were truly refugees from something in their home country, right? No way.
Not at all. Not at all. They everything was rehearsed. They knew exactly what to say. They knew exactly when to come, where to come, and how to ask for this asylum. This was rehearsed. This was all part of the cartel plans to get these people into this country. Look, we took members of Congress down to the border to see for themselves how bad it was. You saw videos, you saw photos, but until you saw it with your own eyes, it was a sight to see, and not a good sight. It was just so horrible. The smugglers were literally backed up on the amount of people that they could come across, that they could bring across the river. They were backed up by the thousands on anything that could float. They were bringing them across. And the Biden administration did nothing. If it wasn't for Governor Abbott in the state of Texas, Texas itself would have been completely overrun. So we're very grateful to the governor for bringing the Texas military department and allowing DPS to go out there and do the job that the Biden administration wasn't allowing the Border Patrol to do. It was horrible. It was very, very horrible.
Paul, innocent children just a pawn in these bad guy schemes, right?
100%. They were renting out children. There were many times that we apprehended the same child with a different adult, a quote sponsor. It was sad. It was, criminal what they did to this country. And now they lost, all those children. The Trump administration is doing everything that they can to make sure that they find those children, reunite them with their families, whether it's their families that are here or in their own countries. We're trying to do the best we can to unscrew exactly what the Biden administration did to this country.
Paul, really appreciate you joining us today. Appreciate your insights, and most of all, appreciate your service and all the members of the Border Patrol and the immigration services as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet. We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth studio.
Hi, this is Mark.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Pick me up, love. Pick me up, love. Every day. Pick me up from the bottom of to the top, love, every day. Paying no mind to torn, sorry fancies to take my chances on every day. Left to right.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So Rhino and I were talking during the break there. Mr. Perez was excellent, we thought. What do you guys think? First time we've had him on, and we got to get him back. There ain't no doubt, because I felt like in that 12 minutes we got more insight and more meaningful, interesting, accurate information about this whole immigration debacle than in any conversation we've ever had. I felt like we got more from him than we would, say, a member from Congress, but all due respect, because he's on the ground dealing with this, him and his team, right? And he's in touch with people across the country that are enforcing these laws and involved in this process. So you probably heard about the swamp sweep. Looks like that is taking place right now in New Orleans, I think, is where they're mostly focused. And it's no surprise that the closer you are to a port of entry, right, more likely, and of course Louisiana being close to Texas, where we see a lot of movement across the border, and then they kind of take a right there and head east and end up in Louisiana. But port cities historically have always been where we see a lot of influx, but also happening in Mississippi, which is a good thing in my view. So deporting those who are here illegally just makes sense. But, man, my bigger concern is we didn't vet all these people. And the Biden administration was handing out legal immigration statuses like candy. And he had confirmed that. That's why I asked that question. No way all these people truly need asylum. Because I think the way, if I'm not mistaken, Rhino, the way our law defines asylum, you got to be literally in fear for your life in your home country. You got some nutcase oppressive leader. Have we had that historically? Sure, that's happened. I can't help but think of the boat people coming from Cuba as an example when Castro was going nuts down there. But these people coming across, no. There's no way they legitimately need asylum or could claim.
It especially falls to pieces when you had Democrat operatives south of the border coaching these people on what to say and where to go and how to say it.
He just confirmed it. It's all schemed.
They were proud of it. They put it on social media. Look at me. I'm here helping the immigrants.
It was totally scripted. Unbelievable. So you got members of our highest bodies of government in our country coaching people how to game our laws. That's just unthinkable. So much for taking that oath, right? We've seen that from some members of the Senate making their little cute montage telling members of our armed forces, disobey the commander-in-chief. No, you can't do that. Boy, even Stephen A. Smith, have you seen him? He's been on a tear lately. He had literally said that. He's the commander-in-chief. You may not like him, but that's the way our laws work. And as long as we have people out there willing to flout our laws like that because they don't like the individual, we might as well be a banana republic. That's what happens in those countries. It's exactly what happens. And now you can't help but bring up this billions of dollars. It's being reported now as much as $8 billion. It's schemed, extorted, illegally obtained by Somalian NGOs, shipping it back to terrorist organizations with links to Al-Qaeda. Think about that.
And at least $1 billion of it was based solely on a law authored by Ilhan Omar, who was meeting with people that have been accused of stealing tax dollars and having parties at places of business that were owned by those stealing tax dollars.
She literally is the face for an anti-American who's serving in the U.S. House of Representatives. It's unfathomable that that's actually happening. It truly is. But originally it was thought to be about $1 billion, and I heard a report this morning saying, no, once you start peeling back the onion, looks like it might be as much as $8 billion of taxpayer money going to Somalia, who's one of the most corrupt countries on the planet. And that's what they want. They want that system here. I could say that you ought to be ashamed of yourself, but that's too kind. It's beyond that. There ought to be consequences for an Ilhan Omar being a player in this scam. It's more than a scam, but to defraud the American people in that way and give it to people who want to wipe us off the planet. Only Democrats in this country could achieve that. Fox News SuperTalk News is next. Stay with us.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays live from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday, y'all.
601-879-4395. That would be the C Spire text line if you'd like to join the conversation. So, yeah, I went back and talked to our content director. I said, get Mr. Perez on kind of a regular rotation. He was extremely well-versed in the subject, informative, and I just felt like, we're getting it from the proverbial horse's mouth here. And it's not being filtered, as you like to say, through numerous layers before it gets to us. So appreciate him coming on. And I don't think we've seen the end of the deleterious effects of the illegal immigration. We haven't seen the end of that, have we? Not even close.
No, because it's not politically or even socially palatable to actually do what it takes to get rid of all of them.
And it, you were talking earlier, well, no, it wasn't you, but you were talking about stem walls, and we'll get to that in a second. I found that interesting. But I think it was in New Orleans, yeah. So we got the swamp sweep going on. I saw a video, I don't know if you saw that this morning, of protesters showing up, I think at a city council meeting, protesting about ICE, getting unruly, out of control. NOPD had to pick them up. Do you just look silly when you got two police officers, one holding you underneath the shoulders and the other grabbing you by the ankles, literally carrying you out like that? How could you feel good about yourself in that respect?
Because they don't have any shame.
Oh, my gosh.
They've been taught that shame is an artifact of European colonialism and white supremacy.
That is absolutely true. That's totally true. Right up there with delayed gratification, right? Hard work, striving towards success. We've all been told that by the left. Can't do that. A can-do attitude. You got to get that one out there, too. Unbelievable. Losers, that's what you are. You are losers. And then you complain because you're losing in life? Because that's what you're doing. You're showing up at city council meetings, making a fool out of yourself, all to protect illegals. Yeah, we haven't seen the end of it yet. I just don't believe it. Because these people weren't vetted. Haven't we learned that about all of these Afghan refugees? Which 100% came about because of Biden's disastrous withdrawal. That wouldn't have happened without that. Who could ever unsee the images of those big, giant American airplanes that were rolling out there on the tarmac and just this army of Afghans surrounding it, right, trying to keep pace with it, running with it? You can't unsee that. It's just dumb what he did. Of course, he did a lot of stuff that was dumb. Oh, man. But, yeah, I think we'll be reeling from the effects of that for a while. So I applaud the president's efforts here to go identify and apprehend, as Mr. Perez said, these people who are here illegally and get them the heck out of the country. It's the way it should be, man. It's so many, again, negative impacts of that. And there are some who want to immigrate to this country legally. And we do have, you recall, some standards on how many we allow. We need to relook at that, I think, and see if we need to make some adjustments there. But still, that is through the legal process. And by the way, you're not supposed to be granted that unless you agree to assimilate, like the Somalians in Minnesota.
Yeah, so much for assimilation when they're having press conferences from the mayor and the police department where they have to speak in Somalian.
Exactly. I hardly call that assimilation, especially when you're extorting American dollars and laundering them back to Somalia and then distributing them to Somalian households, one of the poorest countries, by the way, on the planet, and then to, I can't remember what it's called, Al-Shahad or one of those dang terrorist groups, but it has been determined they have Al-Qaeda ties. And there ain't nothing good about Al-Qaeda. Of course, the Barack Obama...
Well, that's not exactly true. There is one good thing about Al-Qaeda. They don't really like ISIS.
That is true.
And ISIS doesn't really like Al-Qaeda.
That's absolutely
Both
true.
Of them point fingers back and forth to the other. You're not radical enough. You don't do this enough. You don't do that enough.
It's a powder keg situation is really what it is, more than anything. Man, oh, man. Yeah, Karen in Oxford said it's the definition of treason. I agree, especially when you got members of the U.S. Congress, right, Karen, that seem to provide preferential treatment and deference to illegals over American citizens. That's despicable. And it's disturbing that there are enough people that agree with that keep reelecting them to Congress in that seat. A function of bad immigration policy of the past. That's just one example. So imagine the millions that Biden let across, and they filter out throughout the country, and we end up with more districts that look like that one, where, as you say, you got to address the attendees in Somalian. We could have that again elsewhere in the country, is the point. On the C Spire text line, yeah, waste, agree. Yeah, somebody said, very good, bring him back. I agree. We're going to do it. John in Pontotoc said, we used to nation build, not try and reinvent our nation. Agree. That's not, and by the way, that's inconsistent with our immigration laws. We don't say anything about, yeah, we'll let you in, and you could just keep all of your values and all of the policies and laws that, and ideology that you're accustomed to in your homeland, you can implement that here and live your life accordingly. No, that's not the way it's supposed to work. We should never accept anybody. I think what's
really enraging is the fact that you have so many legal and illegal immigrants that come here claiming asylum, claiming to be running from violence, and when they get here, they vacation in their homeland. They take multiple trips a year to where they came from. That could be very easily figured out and remedied, but it doesn't seem like the government wants to do anything about it.
No,
the government
I agree.
knows when you leave the country.
That's true.
So if you apply as an asylee, I'm afraid for my life in my home country. I need to come to yours. All right, here's the paperwork. Wait, why are you going back?
And the same is true of the number participating in SNAP, in Medicaid, the ACA subsidies, housing assistance, the other gambit of federal assistance programs. all of which are available to legal immigrants. The problem is they came here illegally. That's why I asked Paul. And then the Biden administration quickly would slap, asylee, parolee, refugee, making you legal, like that. And then they go sign up for benefits. So yesterday you were illegal. Today you're legal. And there's a process for that, but they largely ignored it. Intentionally, just like Paul said. Oh, yeah, eventually we'll get you full legal citizen status, and you can vote for us. You'll repay us, right?
And in the meantime, you'll be counted on the census so that the Democrats get more
That's totally
districts.
True. Because according to our law, it counts residents, not citizens, in the districts, which Republicans have attempted to change.
In California alone, the overcounting of people that should not be in this country at all gave California 7 districts.
I've seen similar reports, all of which are Democrat. So I agree. Brent in Pontotoc said, I wish they would come to Pontotoc and round up illegals. I hear you, Brent. And it appears to me that
Call ICE. Give them an address.
I believe, I would also recommend maybe contacting Representative Trent Kelly's office. Right? That would be one approach to take because it's where it starts, is at the federal level.
That's why they call ICE. I mean, you can go
you can.
to
You're right about
Kelly's
that.
office. They'll contact ICE, or you can just contact ICE yourself.
You're right about that. Maybe we ought to pay some sort of bounty, right? If you report and your report is
there are
determined
some
to be
private
accurate.
entities that are already doing that. I forget what state it was in, but there's a bar that'll give you a free month of beer if you could prove you helped send somebody back.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. I got a couple of texts here as well concerning, concerning health care. We'll get on that on the other side of the break. But coming up next, by the way, it's Kelly Bennett, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. We'll be right back.
If you're feeling anxious about
Listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We welcome now, as we do every Friday, a member of the fantastic SuperTalk Mississippi News team. Today it's Kelly Bennett, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Morning, guys. I made a big boo-boo this morning, Gerard.
What's that?
I made a big boo-boo. I knew I was coming on camera with you today, and I thought, I'm going to wear a cute little ugly Christmas sweater. It'll be really cute.
Yeah.
I did not think that my mic would pick up the little jingle bells that are on my sweater.
Yeah.
I have been fighting that all morning long. The mic is very sensitive.
That is cool. Well, I like it. You're in the Christmas spirit there. It looks good there on television. So appreciate you joining us this morning. What do you got for us? We got high school football. It's championship time.
Yeah, we've got a ton of sports news from this week, actually. So as you mentioned, the high school football championships kicked off on Thursday night. Calhoun City beat Simmons 14-8 to secure the 1A crown. West Point had its perfect season snapped. Brookhaven beat them 31-19 for the 5A championship. Today's games kick off at 4. You've got Columbia and Kosciuszko squaring off for the 4A crown. At 7:30, Hattiesburg and Warren Central will play for the 6A title. Tomorrow's games include Raleigh versus Noxubee County in 3A, Heidelberg versus East Webster in 2A, and Gulfport versus Tupelo in the 7A state championship. And we've got the schedule and we've got a live scoreboard already up at supertalk.fm if you want to keep track of what's going on.
That's great. It's big time in Mississippi. A lot of interest, a lot of focus on high school football with the championships underway. And, of course, the Lane Kiffin saga was really something that gripped the entire state for 4 or 5 days there. What do you got for us there? Any update?
I think we've pretty much got that in the review at this point. But the new Ole Miss head football coach, you've got to be pretty impressed with the fact that Pete Golding, here he is, a new coach, had an opportunity to head up a press conference earlier this week. But he said, no, I'm not doing it. I want to shift the focus back where it belongs, on the team. Of course, he was promoted after Lane Kiffin's messy departure for LSU. A lot of what Kiffin claimed happened as a part of his departure, like, for example, being run off the road, has been proven completely untrue. In fact, Ole Miss athletic director Keith Carter was on with the Super Talk this week. He told us Kiffin's claims that the players begged him to stay, he put it nicely. He said it's an overstatement.
I don't think the way he portrayed that meeting was accurate. There was a lot of pushback to him leaving. And, it was really one of those things where, these guys knew they needed coaches to coach the game, and it was sounding like he was going to take, all the offensive staff with him if they didn't, he didn't coach in the game. And so there was a lot of discussion around that.
So the college football playoff rankings, or the team is projected to host a first-round game in Oxford. Of course, everybody's wondering about the ticket process for this big game, which I'm sure a ton of Ole Miss fans are waiting on.
So I believe those will go on sale Sunday after the final announcement. All of our current season ticket holders will have first right of refusal to get their tickets. We're going to sell 13,000 student tickets. That will be first come, first serve. So not just the ones that got season tickets this year. It will be first come, first serve. So that will allow everybody to be in the mix for that. But yeah, I think we have to give 3,500 to the visiting team.
The official bracket will be released on Sunday following the conclusion of conference championships. And then we had the Connor Lee Trophy handed out this week. This is an annual award given to Mississippi's top college football player. That happened Tuesday night. I don't think anybody's surprised by the fact that Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss is the second straight Rebel to win the honor. New York Giant Jackson Dart took home the trophy last year.
This award is a tribute to the hard work and commitment that our team showed this year. So I accept this on behalf of my teammates and coaches at Ole Miss.
So I've got one more sports story for you, Gerard. 3 players with Mississippi ties are up for the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. That includes former Mississippi State defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons, who's with the Tennessee Titans, former Mississippi State punter Logan Cook, who's with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Brandon native and linebacker Demario Davis, who's with the New Orleans Saints. They all made the list. If you want to take a look, I think there are 36 different players. I think I'm right on that. That story's up at supertalk.fm. But congratulations to them. Great honor.
Yeah, that's awesome. And either of those candidates would be well deserving of that distinction and honor. They do Mississippi proud, no doubt about it. So the Jackson County Economic Development Investment. I know this is something that our colleague Ricky Matthews has also talked about as well, the need to regionalize economic development, particularly on the coast. But what's up in Jackson County?
They had a big economic development announcement this week. I don't know why I can't talk today, Gerard.
No,
I'm
you're
sorry.
Good.
The Mississippi Development Authority announced that BWC Terminals, which is already an existing business, is expanding its footprint in Pascagoula with a $316 million investment. This is an agreement with Chevron, the Chevron refinery in Pascagoula. BWC refines, manufactures, and distributes petroleum, chemicals, and agriculture products. So they're building this facility at the old Mississippi Phosphates location. And, of course, Governor Reeves is calling it another win for Mississippi.
That area is an economic development gold mine. It's one of those that we really enjoy seeing because it's an existing business that has been in Mississippi for a long time.
The state has seen over $41 billion in private sector investment over just the past 5 years. So more great news.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally is. All right, what else you got, Kelly?
We got word out of Oxford earlier this week. This was a huge trial that received a lot of national attention. The man accused of killing Ole Miss student Jimmy J. Lee, sentenced to 40 years in prison. He was just about to go to trial. They were getting ready to select the jury on Tuesday when he pled guilty to second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Lee went missing in July of 2022. His remains weren't found until February of this year. So that's been a big case, and it's finally reached its conclusion.
New area code. What's going on there?
Yeah, this was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't realize the population was growing this much in the area, but northern and central Mississippi are getting ready for a major phone change. The state is adding a new 471 area code to the region, which is currently served by 662. The Public Service Commission approved the addition to ensure enough phone numbers remain available as demand in that area continues to rise. The new overlay takes effect January 30th of next year, expanding numbering capacity without requiring existing 662 users to give up their current numbers. So it sounds like this is for the new guys coming into the area for a phone number.
Wow. Didn't see that coming. That's for sure. I'm kind of still stuck in the days when we had one for the entire state. Right?
Well, there's been a lot of debate about whether or not the last census was actually accurate in Mississippi, and they did come in and do a correction. Sometimes I think when I see these stories that Mississippi is growing in population, and we just really haven't been given credit for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And there's been certainly some questions about that. Just the process of obtaining the accurate census counts has been under scrutiny, no doubt about it. All right, Farmers Aid announcement. What's going on there? That's a big one in Mississippi.
Yeah, ag producers have really been having a tough time for a lot of different reasons, including inflation. The tariffs have kind of cut into what's going on with them. Well, on Tuesday, U.S. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said the administration will make an announcement next week on further payments to farmers suffering from export losses. This is going to be called a bridge payment program for farmers, and it's expected to provide short-term relief while longer trade and aid packages are finalized. So we'll keep you up to date on that next week as soon as it's announced.
I got you. All right. Appreciate the update, Kelly. Good job there. Thanks a lot. See you next time.
Thanks a lot.
You bet.
All right. See you next time.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. It's Middays. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook News with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. Too much love drives a man insane. You broke my will, oh, what a thrill. Girl, in this your wreck is just quitting balls of fire. I let that love, all I thought it was funny. You came along and you moved, now honey, I changed my mind, love is fine. Goodness gracious, just quitting balls of fire. You kiss me, baby.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. So we had the discussion earlier about just the rising cost of health care and health insurance now averaging in the country for family coverage $27,000 a year. Now, consider that minimum wage makes you about $15,000 a year. Of course, very few people earn minimum wage, and even a smaller number of those are breadwinners of the household, or the primary providers of income for a household. But the federal poverty level is about equal to that, 100% of it, $15,000. So you'd have to make 200% of the federal poverty level to purchase insurance coverage for a family, and that'd leave you $3,000 a year for the rest of your living expenses. That's how out of control it is. $27,000 for family coverage. Employers are grappling with this because most people in this country get their insurance from their employer. So most of the time when you hear both sides of the aisle talking about health insurance and premiums and all the other various policies around that, they're generally referring to the individual market, which is amounts to less than 10%, about 7% or so of the total insured. It's a small fraction of the total insured. You got, of course, Medicare, Medicaid, commercial coverage, group market, and then you got commercial coverage, individual market. So just keep that in mind. And that means employers are going to have to pay more based on the amount that they pay, and it varies from employer to employer, but some employers pay some or all of the individual employee. That's the most common scenario, the most common benefit structure. Some will pay for some percentage of all of your coverage, regardless of which category you're in, the individual and spouse, the individual and dependent, the individual and family. Just depends. It varies. Again, it's often a factor in recruiting employees. It's a big negotiating item. It's that benefit there because it's gone up so much. It's critical to a lot of folks' household income. That's where we are with respect to that. On the C Spire text line, my wife's single-person health insurance doubled yesterday. Lucky she was able to be added to my policy, but everyone there could not do that. So the question is, I'm glad that worked out for you. Added to your policy, do you get your policy from your employer? And if so, I'm just curious, if that's the case, why did you have a separate policy from her? That would be a little unusual. Typically, you'd be covered by both. So that would be two different employer-provided policies, which you certainly could do that for the worker and their spouse. Spouse gets it from their employer. You get it from your employer. Usually it works out. Yeah, I work at a different company. Okay. Typically it would work out where it would be less expensive for you and your spouse to be covered by the same employer, either yours or your spouse's employer, depending on what they provide in terms of benefit. And then, of course, as you know, group coverage can vary in its price depending on how many people are in your group, a whole bunch of other factors, and who the carrier is and what the network looks like and what the out-of-pocket cost options are and whether or not you have an HSA. One of the reasons I know, and there's lots of people that are pointing out, the administrative cost. Thomas loves to share that with us every day, except he doesn't share the cost. He shares the number of people, the chart on the number of people. And I acknowledge the number of people in the administrative side of healthcare, it has spiked considerably relative to the number of clinical staff. A great deal of the reason for that is there's a shortage of clinical staff. We'd hire more. We'd have more if they were out there. That's a fundamental problem that the industry is aware of And there doesn't seem to be any solution in sight. You know, we're running out of primary care doctors. You've seen this reported, Rhino, that you just don't have enough folks that want to be primary care doctors. And it's becoming more difficult to secure a primary care doctor. And that's a problem because just talking about staying healthy, that's where you get that first layer of screening and treatment to prevent some medical issue to evolving into a big medical issue that costs a bunch of money to deal with, not to mention the human costs associated with that in terms of pain and suffering and even death, honestly, that you're addressing with your primary care doctor. And there's a shortage of them. And there is especially an acute shortage in the rural areas of our country because many are uninsured or are on Medicaid or Medicare, which reimburse much lower than commercial coverage does. It's just kind of hard to make economic ends meet as a physician. But there's no doubt that administrative costs have risen, and a great deal of the reason for that is it's just brutally complex to deal with insurer prior authorizations and claim denials and all kinds of Byzantine payment rules, massive regulatory burden on clinicians and administrators. There is a lot of waste and duplicate effort, no doubt about it. You've also got to have very complex, sophisticated, advanced IT systems to do all that stuff for billing and HR and management and clinical operational systems. But the sheer volume of insurance-related tasks creates lots of overhead, and that's been increasing healthcare spending. So you got the insurers that are trying to make ends meet and produce a profit, and so they're looking to protect their assets, and for just as many times as they put up a big screen and roadblock to getting claims approved, just as many times they end up paying for services that they shouldn't have been done. We've got kind of an over-doctoring problem, I would say, in this country as well, and a lot of that's driven by fear of getting sued. It's pretty easy to do that. You're not likely to sue the government, but you could, but you're probably not going anywhere. You're more likely to sue private clinicians. And then there's a move in this country to consolidate to try to reduce these back office administrative expenses, much like we think there should be done with respect to education in school districts. Same thing. So you got to have a lot of fixed costs just to sustain and be in business and just operate, period, fixed administrative costs. But all that has grown substantially. And I know a lot of people will point to executive salaries, but look, that's the market at work. You also can't ignore that at the same time you've got executive salaries rising, you've got rising physician salaries as well. And again, that's the market at work. That's a demand and supply thing. And it's getting to the point where many are saying there's not enough money in it, even though it's extremely handsome pay for just the stress, the hassles, the hours, the education required. Big problem. And my fear is you're seeing more and more on the right start to decry the profit, being made in the healthcare industry, but yet they don't want government healthcare. And that sounds more like the Democrat talking point. Well, yeah, if we got all the profit out of it, just went to Medicare for all, which is government-run insurance where they're right. There's no profit, but there's a ton of waste. We just borrow money to cover it at the federal level. How is that any better off? And like I said, I'm certainly not, I've pointed this out before, I'm not defending insurance companies, but their net profit's not that good. It's quite low, as a matter of fact. You stripped all the net profit out of the insurance industry, and they could reduce your premiums by about 2%. Not a lot of help there, I would say. Let's see here. Thomas says the population isn't growing, but there's 750 H-1Bs living at one address in Tupelo. One address, right, Thomas? You got some data you could share with us on that? One address. Interesting. Do they mean all 750 file one tax return? Do they have Social Security numbers? Do they have ITINs? I'm curious. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
I got rice cooking in the microwave. Got a 3-day beard I don't plan to shave. And it's a goofy thing, but I just gotta say, hey, I'm a-doing alright. Yeah, I think I'll make me some homemade soup. I'm feeling pretty good, and that's the truth. It's neither drink nor drug-induced. No, I'm just doing alright. And it's a great day to be.
So, back with you in the Element Wealth studio. The Buy Now, Pay Later programs, under scrutiny. They're being used quite regularly. They become extremely popular, BNPL as they are known. And so you got some states who are sending letters, attorneys general from those states, sending a letter, signing off on a letter to the BNPL companies. I don't know if I can think of all of them, Rhino, but Klarna, Affirm, ShopPay, PayPal all come to mind. Those are kind of the main ones. Klarna and Affirm, I think, kind of started that whole wave, as I recall.
Yeah, I want to say, was it Klarna that had the Super Bowl ad with the 4 little horses right. and stuff?
Yeah. So the letter says, we are concerned that BNPL, this is from the attorneys general, that BNPL, Buy Now, Pay Later companies, might not be providing their customers with appropriate protections when they return their purchase, never receive what they ordered, or experience other billing errors. Legitimate concern, but I will tell you, anecdotally, I've said this before, it's not because I don't have the money to pay for a purchase. I use it because just fundamentally, philosophically, if somebody, I've said it before, you're going to let me use your money, I'm going to use it for free. I don't pay interest. I never take the selection that goes beyond the interest-free term. And typically that's 2 months. And when that option is presented, yeah, you're going to let me just pay $10 today for a $40 purchase, and I'll pay the other $30 over in $10 installments with zero interest? I'm on board with that. Cost me nothing. Except, they're using my info, my purchase info, not my personal identification info, to maybe hit me with some ads somewhere. I don't care. That's a minor hassle, a minor cost in my view. I'm getting that anyhow, right? You can't avoid that. By the way, that's what makes all that free. I don't know that people get that because, I've talked about it, how somebody in the U.S. Senate a few years ago had to ask Zuckerberg, how are you able to provide this for nothing to the users? And he said, Senator, we sell ads. Remember that? Clueless. Sitting in the U.S. Senate of just how the economic model works in that industry. But I've used it. I've never had a problem. I've returned stuff, no problem. I've never had a billing error, never had a situation where I didn't receive something I bought. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, and I made it clear this is just my anecdotal, personal use experience. So I'm not sure if this is a solution looking for a problem or not with respect to the attorneys general. I would think, Rhino, that's probably a bigger issue with the seller than it is the financier. You know what I'm saying? And there are some unscrupulous sellers, no doubt, unethical, that don't don't offer, I guess, solid terms in the purchase from them. That's a problem.
I do feel like we need to give a bit of a PSA, though, when it comes to the buy now, pay laters. If you are a younger person looking to maybe buy a home, settle down, and start a family in the next few years, you probably want to avoid buy now, pay later, because you are opening a line of credit each and every time you do that. And it's going to make getting a mortgage approved incredibly hard if you've got 30 to 50 open lines of credit or opened lines of credit in the last couple of years.
So while I hear what you're saying, and I've heard that, not a mention of that on my credit reports. And I track my credit reports daily. Not daily, when I get notifications, which are not daily. Hey, your score's gone up. I get that a lot. Hey, you paid this off. Hey, this balance changed. And I always log in. I subscribe to my FICO, which is the service that mortgage lenders use and banks typically use when they're loaning money for vehicles, or even third-party finance companies for vehicles, for example, from the manufacturer.
Well, I'm saying this more from an anecdotal standpoint because if you've listened a lot, you remember I talked about a friend of mine that was trying to buy a house, that the monthly payment would be hundreds of dollars less than they're currently paying in rent.
Yeah.
And they were declined for their mortgage after digging and phone calls and meetings and everything they could possibly do to find out. They pointed to that as one of the deciding factors.
So I'm wondering if the difference was I never take the option where you pay interest and it's more of an installment, a traditional installment arrangement instead of just let me borrow money for 2 months, right? I bet that's what it is because I don't have that sort of situation, and that's why I don't think that ever gets reported. Because if they approve you for that, that means you got sterling credit to start with. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio after Fox News and SuperTalk News. I bet.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 3 of Middays. The afternoon portion is now live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
Yeah, so just looking through that information about employment data in particular and the H-1B visa program. Rhino and I were talking about that offline. I know, Thomas, you're 100% obsessed with this. You must just nothing but eat, sleep, drink, talk, work, H-1B. If I were you, I'd spend more time working. You might be more subject to having your job replaced. But, and it looks like you're anti-profit. I've garnered that from your text now that when companies work and pursue methods and strategies that enhance their bottom line, you seem to be opposed to that. I'm not for fraudulently using the H-1B program. There is a purpose for it, and any use of it that is inconsistent with that stated purpose, I oppose. And I think that has to be reined in. I 100% believe that. And I do know there are abuses. And I accept that. And those abuses need to be addressed. I, however, don't think that's going to be a key issue going into the midterms. I just don't. I don't think that we're going to see Republicans lose the House because of the lack of focus, as you assert, on the H-1B visa program. I think it needs to be cleaned up. I think it needs to be reined in. I think there needs to be more oversight. 100% agree with that. And I know to some extent that's gotten out of control. I also believe that the market will mitigate any problems caused in terms of output quality of goods and services if they're produced by inferior talent. And that's clearly not what the H-1B visa program's for. It was to identify situations where there is a void of talent from an American perspective and bring in people from other countries to fill that void. Honestly, as I recall, Rhino, in World War II, weren't we getting pummeled by rockets and weapons that were created by smart people in enemy countries? And at the end of the war, didn't we bring those people into this country? Believe so.
Yeah, it was Operation Paperclip.
Right. And that's really kind of
started NASA.
Right. And that's really what the H-1B program is about. Now, again,
but at that point in time, you didn't have German scientists exclusively hiring German nationals into entry-level jobs just because they were German.
I'm just pointing out that originally, as I recall, it was the...
That was also before Hart-Celler. That was when we were still under the Ellis Island rules of if you come to this country and you can't support yourself, you're going home immediately.
Which was a good program, in my view, which is the way it should be. And the way, honestly, this country was built and the so-called melting pot really came from that process. But everybody came in here and pulled their weight. It wasn't to come over here and enjoy this myriad of federal taxpayer-funded benefits.
Because we weren't bringing millions of people in from low-trust societies that don't really jive with Western civilization.
And we just heard Mr. Perez, the president of the National Border Patrol Council, tell us earlier that the president, his continuous conveying of the fact that, and Mr. Perez, I'm calling it a fact because I believe that he is a trustworthy person that knows what he's talking about, that is on the ground, that is witnessing this firsthand, says, yeah, it is the worst of the worst that they're emptying out of their jails because it's a drag on their society, on their country's economy and their government spending to take care of these bad people. And they just ship them over here. He totally confirmed that, did he not? So I agree. That's terrible policy on the part of the Democrats and the Biden administration. But the H-1B policy, as I recall, originally was, we have foreign students in American universities. And if there's some that really super excel, and of course there are, then we would grant them an opportunity to stay here and work and contribute to American society, not to work entry-level jobs at lower cost, as you said. So you could argue that Wernher von Braun was such an example of that. He helped build rockets for bad people to use them in a destructive...
Yeah, he was the mastermind of the V-2 rocket.
Yeah, which was causing problems for the Allies and the Americans in World War II.
Entire parts of London.
Right. You've seen that depicted in video where, it had the sirens going off and everybody had to go to bomb shelters and then they bombed London and then when they were out of there, nobody ever seen anything like that. Brand new. So you're right. He brought that knowledge, that intellectual property, if you will, his talent to this country to use for productive purposes. Totally. And that was kind of what the design premise was of the H-1B program. But it's like all government programs, they take a life of their own and they get out of control. The president is also, you've probably seen this, he has taken action to reduce the term of work permits from 5 years to 18 months. And that would require immigrants who've applied for asylum or a range of other programs in this country. They'd get those work permits for 18 months rather than 5 years, and they'd have to reapply. And that makes just total sense. 5 years is crazy. I didn't even know it was 5 years till the president just signed this EO, and that was, just a couple of days ago, as I recall. And this would have an impact on even legal immigration, which would mean that they would not be competing with Americans in the workforce. So, no, it doesn't apply to the H-1B program. as Thomas points out, I'm aware of that. This would be more legal asylum and green cards and work visas. It's a different thing than the H-1B visa program. And I acknowledge that it's out of control, that it's being abused, and that, again, it needs to be addressed, needs to be reined in. I don't think it's going to be a needle mover in the midterm elections. I just don't. I think if you went to the average person on the street and said, how big a problem is the H-1B visa program to you, their likely response would be, what's the H-1B visa program? 99% of them would tell you that. Tim and McGee says, why would anyone in their right mind be against a company or individual making more money? Thomas, if your boss offered you a $10 an hour raise, would you say no? I'd be making way too much money. No, nobody ever does that, Tim. I think I brought that up a couple of days ago. No one goes into their boss's office and says, hey, please pay me less. Cut my pay. People go into their offices all the time and say, please give me more or I'm leaving. That happens. Promote me. Sure. That's just capitalism at work, man. That's the way it works. I love it. We don't want government in that decision, period. Government does need to rein in the H-1B visa program, and I'm never going to fault a company for seeking to improve their bottom line legitimately, legally. Man, the wealth we enjoy in this country and the quality of life, even those that are at the lower end of the income scale, still significantly better than the rest of the world. Government thinks they can. You're seeing a surge, by the way, in billionaires across the globe, including in this country. It's increasing. I consider that a good thing. And there a lot out there say there's just too many billionaires. We're getting too many of them, and it's all being done. This is what the left would tell you, at the expense of everybody else, and that's just horse hockey. That's not true. I think it is evidence that we have a thriving free market system that allows anybody, honestly, to move up the income ladder, even though the world billionaire population has surged to a record high. I say that's a good thing. Global billionaire wealth hit $15.8 trillion in 25. So, and if you don't like that, then what do you want to do? Have government step in like Bernie Sanders and AOC and Robert Reich want to do? You've heard them say there should be no billionaires. And I would just also offer this, then quit using their stuff. You don't want them to get rich? Quit using it. No, don't consume what they produce. Rhino pointed something out about the buy now, pay later programs with respect to the credit reporting and what I think is, and he pointed it out, is misuse. Personally misuse, not misuse from there being something illegal about it, but just a dangerous situation. We'll get to that on the other side of the break in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. I said, come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together.
In life,
it's time for Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So, on the break, Rhino and I were talking about, because we got off into the discussion about the buy now, pay later programs that have sprung up in our financial society, and there's some attorneys general who are really looking at these BNPL companies for possible malfeasance. And by the way, I didn't read the statement, which I should, from Affirm, one of those companies. Klarna, Affirm, probably the two biggest. ShopPay is another one.
Sezzle.
Yeah, Sezzle, yeah. And then PayPal also has. I don't know that they have long-term agreements. I think they just have a PayPal in 4, they call it, as I recall. But this is Affirm's statement, one of the BNPL companies. Affirm has long supported thoughtful regulation and consistent industry standards that promote transparency for consumers and the flexibility to pay over time without any late fees or junk charges. But Rhino makes a point that even though I said that I will use the BNPL systems, and I made it clear I only use the interest-free short-term loans, if you will, not because I need the money, because you're going to let me use your money for free. I know I've beat this horse to death. Okay, I'll do that. Sure, thank you. I'll go put it to work somewhere else while you let me use it. Just like I've made the point that with respect to the Internal Revenue Service, I know a lot of people like refunds because they feel like it helps them manage their money, and I want to wait till I file my tax return and get that big lump sum, and they enjoy that. In my position on that is I don't want the government using my money. I'd rather owe them, honestly. The perfect scenario is 0 for me. So I always set up my withholdings when I was certainly employed and in business to make sure, and then my quarterly estimates to make sure that I pretty much break even when I get done. I don't want any big return from the IRS because that means I've let the government, the most inefficient managers of capital on the planet, use my money. But to the point that Rhino was pointing out, because he's younger, obviously, you've got friends you've probably talked to. We're seeing reports now people are using BNPL to buy groceries and financing it over 12 months and paying interest, expensive interest. Yes, I was thinking about that. Why are they getting dinged on their credit report? My guess is because they're taking out those plans as opposed to what I'm doing, because I've never seen any report from the BNPLs, and I've used them all on my credit report. But that's because I've only used the short-term, no interest, not really a loan is as much it is. We'll just let you pay over. When you enter in one of the longer-term, let's say 6 months, you see an option for that, 12 months, 18 months, depending on the size of the purchase, of course, to qualify for that, you'll see, there's an interest and principal associated with this. That is more like an installment loan, and there is a section, as you know, on your credit report for installment credit. Yeah, I can see how that would be a ding. You may have paid them all off in time, but issuers of credit, like a mortgage lender, would say, you're having to borrow money too much to live. We don't, right? That's what happens. That's the thought process behind this. We're not so sure about loaning you money to buy a house because you don't manage your money very well. You're going to the grocery store and financing it for 12 months. That's what, and so, right, Dave Ramsey would go nuts over something like that. That's a little different than somebody in my position saying, okay, I'll use your money for a couple of months. Sometimes it's 4 weeks. I've seen a term as short as that. No interest. And you say, well, why? How do they make money off that? Because they know that they could shoot stuff to the sellers of what I buy and say, hey, look, you keep sending advertisements to me, and because he can buy over time, even with no interest, they're likely to buy again, right? I mean, that's the model. I love it. I think that's great. But I also agree there's a danger, a risk associated. And it all comes down to responsibility. And
but you would think it would be a proof of your responsibility if you paid everything on time.
And it does. And that does bode well for you.
It was just the anecdotal evidence I had was the number of opened lines.
Right.
That was too big a hurdle for them.
Especially if it's within a recent period of time from when you're trying to get that mortgage loan. Because that tells the mortgage lender, You must be experiencing problems in your household if you're having to go borrow money that many times just to make ends meet in your household. I don't know about giving you this mortgage loan. Now, if you did that and it's 3-4 years ago, they went through a rough period then, but they've smoothed it out. They're good to go. But if you just took out new credit, that's a big red flag to all lenders. That's why you want to be careful if you think you're going to go out and try to borrow money for a house or a car or something like that. Make sure you're not going up and opening up new credit cards or using the BNPL for installment loans. Make sure you're not doing that as you lead up to that period when you're applying, because that is a signal. And normally that's right. History has shown the lending community that people that do that typically default more. I mean, it's not like they're making this up. Now, you were telling me...
They are kind of making it up, though, because there haven't been buy now, pay later systems in the past.
I'm talking about the concept if you went out and applied for credit recently. I'm not talking about just but you're right. The BNPL is just more opportunity for you to do that. That's what that's done. But you were telling me earlier on the break about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and I'm shocked by this. Share that with the folks.
Oh, yeah. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are both joining in and accepting... it was equitable and inclusive credit scores.
That's just garbage. It's garbage. I'm sick of that crap, man. And that's why I'm so glad to report, as we did earlier, that the Supreme Court said that the Texas congressional map is good to go. And the only reason it was drawn the other way, and it had been drawn that way for such a long period of time, is because the DOJ said, nah, you got to have more of them, more of that, more of them. It's all based on race. It's not the way that our congressional representation is not supposed to be based on that. This nonsense that you got to look just like me to represent me, that's racist. That's exactly what the DOJ was ordering. Go be racist. That's really what they were doing. Of course, they'll tell you, look at us. We're helping the oppressed, right? No. What you're doing is you're sanctioning, you're institutionalizing racism in doing that. Man. Well, I'm pleased to see that we're making some progress there. I'd like to see more progress on this health care deal, and somebody that has gone out and is at least attempting to do something, though I'm not a particular fan, is old Senator Josh Hawley. Oh, man, I've lost so much respect for that guy over the last couple of years. He's turned into more of a socialist in my view. But what he's proposing is to allow people to deduct above the line, meaning you don't have to itemize. You get to deduct it from your income, regardless if you have sufficient itemized deductions that exceed the standard deduction to take on your tax return. He's come out and said you ought to be able to deduct your health insurance and your cost of health insurance and your out-of-pocket cost for health care above the line. Well, a couple of things to point out. This has been a problem in the individual market forever. There's a disparity, and here's what I mean by that. When you buy your insurance from your employer, that's pre-tax. That comes off your income before your employer withholds taxes, and then, of course, it would be the same way when you get your W-2. That's going to be net of your insurance. That's been the case for some time in the group market. But there's always been a disparity. If you purchase your insurance in the individual market, and again, that's only about 7-8% of the total insured population, you don't get that same tax benefit. You don't get the tax treatment that you do. I've always wondered, why don't we fix that? And this is a glaring disparity. That a self-employed person, a contractor, they don't get to pay their insurance pre-tax. But those who obtain their insurance from their employers, they do. So Hawley is coming out and proposing to fix that. Man, I got to tell you, I've been talking about this for 20 years. But he's finally waking up and saying, yeah, we ought to be able to do that. So it would help those in the individual market. It wouldn't help those in the group market, which is the vast majority of us. He hadn't offered anything to help those in the group market. We got half an hour of middays remaining. Stay with us.
From theseabrook.com.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
That's a good one here on this Friday. Ace, how long?
I got a live update from the World Cup draw at the Kennedy Center with Trump in attendance.
I just saw it on TV. What's up?
The U.S. just got their first opponent in Group D of the World Cup. Shaquille O'Neal just drew. Australia will be an opponent in Group D for the United States in next summer's World Cup.
I love it.
The Socceroos.
Why are all the big shots there?
It's the World Cup.
Well,
it's a big deal.
I know, but I don't remember them being quite that much. Maybe so.
Well, I mean, it's the World Cup held in the U.S., which if you go back to the 94 World Cup, it broke all kinds of attendance records, even though it was a smaller tournament than the years after. And this year is the first year for a new format that's even bigger with 48 teams.
I got you.
And it's being hosted mainly in the U.S., but Canada and Mexico also have some games in there.
I know, it's a big old deal. Most popular sport in the world. Yeah. Such a great song on the C-Powered text line. I agree. How long? Ace, that was mid-'70s, as I recall. I think I was in high school when that was out.
74.
There you go. That's pretty close to the mid-'70s.
Five Aside.
Five Aside, right. How good is that as an album name? I love it. So let's see, on the C-Spire text line, we got some other conversation going. I'm going to get to that. Let's see. How long does James from Petal, how long does the citizenship process take? You know, I've seen varying reports on that. What's the latest
3
you got?
to 6 years, depending on how long it takes you to get your paperwork filled out and get everything sent in and get back to you. It's I think one of the only prescribed periods of time is there's a 5 or 6 month waiting period between finalization and your oath ceremony.
Yeah. Well, 3 to 6, I mean, that's 1X to 2X. That's why I said all the reports I see, it varies pretty widely. That is a pretty wide range. My guess is, though, for those who truly are deserving and needed as citizens, couldn't we streamline that? Is that just government? Yeah. On the C-Spire text line, related to our conversation with Mr. Paul Perez, the president of the National Border Patrol Council, great guest earlier today. If Mr. Perez comes back, maybe he can examine that for me. He's talking about, ask him why they announced these programs prior to implementation. Why let the people you're looking for know you're coming? So my understanding is they've already been working behind the scenes, right, and identifying people, and then they announce it. My guess is it's a legitimate question. It's the hopes that these people they're tracking leave on their own accord. I think that's what they want, rather than making a fuss and having to go arrest them, apprehend them, as he said, and then deport them. Stephen Pontock says, all taxpayer money they are receiving should be cut off. No more free housing, no more free stuff. So the problem is, Steve, is that it's not illegals that are getting that. We already have laws in place for that. And let me say, does that mean that they don't slip through? No, absolutely they do. A combination, as I've said, of terrible IT systems. That's by far the number one problem. When you see that the general accounting office can go apply for benefits in the Obamacare exchanges and use one bogus Social Security number 23 times and all of them get approved, all you got to know is we got bad IT systems, poorly designed. We've got a ton of talent and capability in this country to address and fix that problem. We have private companies using rock-solid IT systems across this country that couldn't function without them if they made those kinds of blatant, glaring, critical errors, such as approving someone for federal benefits with a bogus ID. We've got plenty of means to solve that problem. We just need a little elbow grease, a little leadership, a little initiative. And as Rhino likes to say, the not my problem people, they're a lot less involved in that process, though, as you know. That's almost a complete – I actually researched that yesterday, the sequence and the workflow on that. It's a bunch of electronics. It's all it should be, honestly. It's completely automated. It's just bad systems that can't do things like, oh, are you dead before I approve you for this? That's mind-boggling that in 2025, with all the connectivity and all the what are called APIs, application programming interfaces, and all the sophisticated technology we have, that's easy. That's nothing. Companies do business with each other, have all sorts of electronic back-end integration to process behind the scenes. You don't even know about it. Every time you hit that button and buy something, a ton of integration between multiple systems housed all over the world, honestly, in data centers, takes care of all that validation for you. That's why you can tap it and get what you want, and it show up, in some cases, that day. And completely process the transaction without any human intervention. But we can't do that in administering something as simple from a processing perspective, to make sure that you truly are eligible for these benefits. That's crazy. Why do we even have to report our income? Why don't we just query the tax databases for that? Why don't they do that? It's bizarre. Oh, put your income here. You lied about it. You're still approved, right? That's what's happening. That's bizarre to me. It's inexcusable. Come on.
In that same vein, why can't the government just send you a bill for your taxes instead of making you guess?
That's true. Yeah. And go through a Byzantine computation exercise, right? I agree. So I know I'm on a rant on that, but if we're not going to solve this problem just because we brought attention to it, and we're asking the states, as is the case with our Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. She, you've seen that. She's requested SNAP data from all the states because it's administered at the state level. And I often wonder, should it be? Should that not be centralized? I get it that there's some nuances implemented at the state level that still fit within the federal guidelines. But at a minimum, before you even stand up your system at a state, you should be required to have integration capability with every other state. In fact, I've built these before. You should be able to create an information hub for exchange in a clearinghouse of information. You could do it all through automated XML API queries. Just boom, send that information, and it comes back and says, "Oh, sorry, we found them enrolled, in Idaho, denied in Mississippi." That's how easy it is. I may be oversimplifying it a bit, but we've been creating systems that address that level of highly integrated processing in this country for 40 years. In the old days, Rhino, it used to be called EDI, Electronic Data Interchange. And there are a bunch of American national standards around electronic data interchange for simple things like purchase orders and order acknowledgments and invoices and remittance, the entire supply. We've been doing that since the 70s. I wrote systems to do that. You're telling me we can't integrate all 50 states to make sure they're not dead reported in another state before we sign them up for benefits? You know why? Because they don't want to. I'm telling you. They looked. Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
That's it. They look the other way. They don't want to deny anybody. They want to put all that money. Even if it means you're double, triple, quadruple dipping, they're fine with that. The people who run our government.
Not my problem.
Exactly. It's because, we'll just go borrow money to pay for it. Doesn't cost them anything. Private sector, you can't do that. You go bankrupt. That's capitalism. You don't perform, you go bankrupt. That's why it's the best system. And if you perform well, you get rewarded. Simple as that. The Somalis in Minnesota are doing just exactly what Obama planned when he brought them here. I agree. That's on the C Spire text line. Totally agree. DEI, deport every illegal. Let's see here. I've been self-employed for 22 years, says Kevin in Monticello. I just accepted a full-time employee position with insurance being the main reason. Can't afford insurance privately anymore. So, right, Kevin, I self-employed. Two things. One, you're having to buy in the individual market. Two is, as you know, you don't get to deduct your premiums. It's not pre-tax. Now, the cost you pay for your premiums, your employer, I'm sure, kicks in some as well. That's pre-tax. I get it. That's why this disparity should be step one. I don't want Hawley to be the one to solve that problem, Rhino, because I just don't think that he's a good senator. But look, analysts of health care policy, particularly vis-a-vis tax treatment of health care expenses, have been talking about this disparity for 30 years between the individual and the group market, and Congress has never acted on it. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Here's John and Cole.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Just like she used to do. She's so full of surprises. She reminds me of you. In the heart of the night. In the heart of the night. In the heart of the night.
Oh, what a great tune that is. That's Poco. Heart of the Night. Talking about old New Orleans down on the Pontchartrain. Back with you in the Element Well studio. Final segment of the week. It's been a good week. We had a blast up at Cleveland yesterday. The music was especially good, wasn't it? Wasn't Tricia good? Man, to sit down with a guitar like that and put a headset on and make those kinds of pleasant sounds for Christmas, I really enjoyed that. If you got to watch me on TV there, folks, I was just sitting back in that stool just enjoying a little rest in the middle of the show. That's why I kept her on for a second segment. Get to relax a little bit.
Got another update from the World Cup draw at the Kennedy Center. The second opponent for the U.S. in Group D for the World Cup next summer, Paraguay.
Oh, Paraguay.
So we got Paraguay and Australia.
Wow. So on the C Spire text line, somebody said, are we still paying Biden retired president pay when he is the cause of this immigration problem? Yeah, sadly, we are. And a couple of people said, with respect to our systems and the problem in our systems and how stuff slips through our systems where we end up paying somebody 23 times with a bogus Social Security number for Obamacare premium tax credits. I agree. A couple of people said, same applies to voter rolls. Man, don't I know it? And, every time we have Secretary of State Michael Watson on, we talk about it. He's advocated for it. He's pushed for it. We can't get it through the legislature. Just allowing us to let's just delete somebody that's been inactive for whatever it was, 7, 8, last 2 presidential elections, I think, right, was the provision.
That was the latest one, yeah.
Yeah, way it was drafted. And by the way, as he pointed out, I pointed out, you pointed out, but guess what? If you show up at the ballot box and you've been inactive for the last 2 presidential elections, still vote. Sign an affidavit. We'll check it out later. Your vote counts, right? We check it out. Nah, you're lying. And nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to sign an affidavit. I don't believe if they showed up, unless there was some inadvertent error, which is possible. But, yeah, there's no doubt that when you have people on the voter rolls that don't need to be on there because they're deceased, because they've moved, other circumstances, you're opening up the door for voter fraud. It starts with having accurate voter rolls. It's why we have any sort of voter irregularities in those states that do the mass mail-out. The president's talked about that. It's not that when he talks about mail-in voting, he's not talking about the kind of excuse-based, more work involved, more steps involved mail-in voting as we have here in Mississippi, and especially for our brave warriors that are located outside of their jurisdiction. But of course we want them to be able to participate in the voting process. It's when you send a ballot out to everybody on the rolls, knowing that you've let the rolls age, and you know you got people that aren't even around with us anymore. They're 120 based on their birth date. And you're sending ballots out, and they inevitably end up in the hands of people who intend to commit voter fraud. That's what causes voter fraud more than anything else, is this mass mail-out. I would never support that, and we're never going to let that happen in the state of Mississippi. But that doesn't negate the fact that we need to clean up the dang voter rolls. In fact, we ought to pass federal law requiring every county in America to clean up its voter rolls. It's another situation, Rhino. How hard is it to check with the vital records systems? Oh, dead. Delete. How dang hard is that today? 0. Used to be the old days. Somebody had to go down there, pull the documents, the death certificates. Not anymore. Man, that's so frustrating. I know I sound frustrated. Jason in Starkville says, I bet Palantir could do that real easy. There are tons of highly capable. It's intent, it's desire, it's focus. We just don't have it. I just don't feel like that it exists the way it should. But we can make laws all day. We already have laws. That's not the problem. We already have laws that say you can't be illegal, you can't be dead and get benefits. We already have laws. We don't need more laws. We need systems to support the laws. It's the same thing with the immigration problem. We had laws. The president said that. We got laws. We just need to enforce them. Same thing here. And this is a big electronic endeavor. We need electronic systems to correspond with and enforce and coordinate with and orchestrate our law at the state, at all levels, local, state, and federal level. End of story. Well, Dave in Madison said technology is not the problem. People are. Crooked people are, Dave. I agree. We're out of here today. Back with you again Monday. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.